The cashier ignores the elderly man counting coins with shaking hands. "Sir, there's a long line behind you. Either pay or move along." 58-year-old Staff Sergeant Robert Chun stands at the pharmacy counter trying to afford his heart medication. With crumpled dollar bills and loose change, while impatient customers behind him mutter complaints about holding up their day. What none of them know is that the distinguished gentleman in the expensive suit walking through the store entrance is Colonel James Mitchell, the man who owes his life to Robert's heroic actions in Vietnam 45 years ago. What happens when these two war veterans reunite will restore your faith and loyalty and remind you that true brotherhood never dies. If stories of unexpected reunions touch your heart, smash that subscribe button and tell us in the comments about a time someone from your past surprised you when you needed them most. This emotional encounter will leave you speechless. Robert had been standing at the Walgreens pharmacy counter for 10 minutes, carefully counting the bills and quarters from his worn wallet. His monthly heart medication cost $87, but his disability check wouldn't arrive for another 3 days. He had managed to scrape together $73.42 from his couch cushions and the change jar in his kitchen. The young pharmacist, wearing a name tag that read Jessica, taps her fingers impatiently on the counter while Robert recounts his money for the third time. She sighs loudly and tells him that she can't hold up the line all day for someone who doesn't have enough money to pay for their prescription. Several customers behind Robert start checking their watches and making frustrated comments about poor planning. A middle-aged woman with her arms full of vitamins speaks up from behind Robert, saying that some people need to learn basic financial responsibility before coming to the pharmacy. She suggests that Robert should have checked his bank account before wasting everyone's time with his embarrassing display of poverty. Robert's hands shake slightly as he continues, organizing his bills and coins on the counter. The pharmacist tells him that the total is $87 even, and she needs exact payment or a credit card to complete the transaction. She adds that if he can't afford his medication today, he should come back when he has sufficient funds instead of disrupting other customers. A businessman in line behind the woman with vitamins loudly declares that this pathetic situation is exactly what's wrong with people who don't plan ahead or take responsibility for their financial obligations. He tells Robert that holding up paying customers for his personal problems is selfish and inconsiderate behavior that shows a lack of respect for others. Robert quietly explains to Jessica that he's $13.58 short, but his disability check will arrive on Wednesday and he can pay the difference then. Jessica shakes her head and explains that pharmacy policy doesn't allow partial payments or payment plans for prescription medications. She tells him to step aside so she can help customers who are actually prepared to make purchases. The woman with vitamins grows more agitated and announces to everyone within hearing distance that she has 3 kids waiting in the car and doesn't have time to watch someone beg for charity at a pharmacy counter. She suggests that Robert should have applied for assistance programs instead of expecting random strangers to solve his financial problems. Robert steps to the side and watches as Jessica helps the next customer, his prescription bottle sitting on the counter just out of reach. He pulls out his cell phone and starts calling family members, hoping someone might be able to lend him the remaining money he needs for his heart medication that keeps him alive. His first call goes to his daughter in California, but it goes straight to voicemail. His second call reaches his brother in Texas, who explains that he's between jobs and can't spare any money right now. Robert's third call to his sister results in a lengthy explanation about her own financial struggles and medical bills that prevent her from helping. The businessman grows increasingly frustrated watching Robert make phone calls and tells him to take his personal drama outside, instead of turning the pharmacy into his private office. Other customers nod in agreement, clearly annoyed by the disruption to their shopping experience, and Robert's continued presence near the prescription counter. Jessica calls security and tells them there's a customer causing a disturbance at the pharmacy who needs to be escorted outside. She explains that Robert has been holding up the line for 20 minutes without being able to pay for his medication, and his phone calls are disrupting other customers' shopping experience. Robert ends his final phone call with no success and realizes he'll have to go 3 days without his heart medication until his disability check arrives. He apologizes to Jessica and the waiting customers, then slowly walks away from the pharmacy counter with his empty pill bottle clutched in his trembling hands. As Robert makes his way toward the store exit, he passes the greeting card aisle where a distinguished man in expensive tailored suit is examining birthday cards. The man glances up briefly, does a double take, and stares at Robert with growing recognition and disbelief. Colonel James Mitchell, now a successful defense contractor, drops his birthday card and calls out Robert's name with a voice filled with shock and joy. Robert turns around slowly, squinting at the well-dressed stranger who somehow knows his identity. Recognition dawns on his weathered face as he realizes he's looking at Lieutenant Jimmy Mitchell, the young officer he saved in the jungles of Vietnam in 1978. James rushes over to Robert and embraces him warmly, tears forming in his eyes as he looks at his old friend and hero. He tells Robert that he's been trying to find him for decades, wanting to thank him properly for saving his life during that terrible firefight near the Cambodian border. Robert smiles weakly and says he never expected to see Jimmy again after all these years. James notices Robert's obvious distress and asks what's wrong, why he looks so worried and upset. Robert explains his situation with the heart medication, apologizing for bothering James with his financial problems when they're just having this wonderful reunion. James immediately tells Robert not to worry about money and asks him to explain exactly what happened at the pharmacy counter. Robert reluctantly describes his embarrassment at the pharmacy, how he came up short on his medication money and had to leave empty-handed. James listens with growing anger, not at Robert, but at the situation that allows a war hero to go without life-saving medication because of $13.58. James takes Robert by the arm and walks him back to the pharmacy counter, where Jessica is still helping other customers. He politely but firmly tells Jessica that he needs to pay for Robert Chun's heart medication immediately, and that there will be no questions about cost or insurance coverage. Jessica looks confused as this well-dressed man produces a platinum credit card and insists on paying for Robert's prescription. The same customers who had been complaining about Robert now watch in silent curiosity as James handles the transaction with quiet authority and obvious wealth. James doesn't stop at just paying for the current prescription. He asks Jessica about Robert's other medications and requests a full year's supply of everything Robert needs, along with any vitamins or supplements his doctor might recommend. Jessica's attitude changes completely as she realizes she's dealing with someone who clearly has significant financial resources. The woman with vitamins who had been complaining about Robert now looks embarrassed and uncomfortable as she watches this reunion unfold. The businessman who called Robert selfish and inconsiderate quietly moves to a different line, clearly regretting his harsh words about the elderly veteran. As Jessica processes the large prescription order, James tells Robert about his life after Vietnam, how he completed college on the GI Bill, became a career officer, and eventually started a defense contracting company that now employs over 300 people. How he's been successful beyond his wildest dreams, but never forgot the debt he owes to Robert Chun. Robert listens in amazement as James describes the firefight that nearly cost him his life 45 years ago. How Robert carried him 6 miles through enemy territory with a bullet in his shoulder and shrapnel in his leg. How Robert refused medical treatment until James was safely evacuated to a field hospital. How the doctors said James would have died from blood loss if Robert hadn't applied pressure to his wounds for those crucial hours. James tells the gathering crowd at the pharmacy that Robert Chun saved his life when they were both young soldiers in Vietnam, and that everything James has accomplished since that day exists because of Robert's courage and sacrifice. He explains that Robert never sought recognition or reward for his heroic actions, disappearing into civilian life while James built his career and fortune. The same customers who had been impatient and cruel to Robert now listen in stunned silence, as they understand they've been witnessing the humiliation of a genuine war hero. Several people approach Robert to shake his hand and thank him for his service, their earlier complaints replaced by genuine respect and admiration. Jessica completes the prescription order and apologizes profusely to Robert for her earlier rudeness and impatience. She explains that she didn't understand his situation and promises to be more compassionate with customers who are struggling financially. James tells her that respect shouldn't depend on understanding someone's background, but accepts her apology on Robert's behalf. James insists on taking Robert to lunch at the finest restaurant in town, but Robert suggests they go to the small diner where he usually eats when he can afford it. James agrees immediately, understanding that Robert values simple pleasures and authentic friendship more than expensive displays of wealth. At the diner, James and Robert spend 3 hours catching up on decades of separated lives. James learns about Robert's struggles with PTSD, his difficulty finding steady employment after the war, and his ongoing health problems that drain his limited finances. Robert learns about James's family, his business success, and his lifelong gratitude for the man who saved his life in Vietnam. Before they part ways, James insists on giving Robert his personal phone number and making arrangements to help with his ongoing financial needs. He explains that his success means nothing if his brothers-in-arms are struggling, and that taking care of Robert is both an honor and an obligation he's carried for 45 years. James also makes Robert promise to attend the upcoming Vietnam Veterans Reunion that James helps organize every year. He tells Robert that many of the men from their unit have been wondering what happened to him, and that his presence would mean everything to soldiers who still remember his courage and sacrifice. The next week, James visits Robert's modest apartment and is shocked by the conditions his hero has been living in. Without asking permission, he arranges for Robert to move into a comfortable senior living community with full medical coverage and a monthly stipend that ensures he'll never have to count coins for medication again. Robert initially resists James's generosity, saying he doesn't want charity or handouts from anyone. James explains that this isn't charity, but a debt of honor, a small repayment for the gift of life that Robert gave him in the jungles of Vietnam. He tells Robert that accepting help from a grateful friend is not weakness, but wisdom. 6 months later, Robert walks proudly into the Vietnam Veterans Reunion, wearing a new suit that James bought for him, his medications paid for, and his dignity restored. The room full of aging warriors erupts in applause when they see him, remembering the young medic who saved so many lives while never seeking credit or recognition for his heroic actions. What happens when these two war veterans reunite will restore your faith and loyalty and remind you that true brotherhood never dies. If stories of unexpected reunions touch your heart, smash that subscribe button and tell us in the comments about a time someone from your past surprised you when you needed them most. This emotional encounter will leave you speechless.